So let's move on to the next game. This is Iowa State at Baylor. This was a Baylor team that I watched the full first game they played against. I think it was Texas State. We were on the points there. Good team. Iowa State, of course, they had the loss against Iowa, but I still think it's a pretty good team, and they're coming off a win against UNLV, which it's UNLV. But for Brock Purdy, I think it was big for him to just have some success, no matter who the opponent was, because that Iowa defense is no joke, and it can mess you up. I mean, Dustin Crum, he struggled for Kent State last week. So it's good to have a game where you show stuff, even though it's a lesser opponent. So I'm currently showing Rob the line here. It looks like -7 for Iowa State. They're going to be on the road again. And let's see here. Just closed out of it. What do you see for a total? I think it was 47.
I'm showing about 47 and a
Yeah,
half.
47
It's
and
kind
a
of
half.
scattered.
Yeah.
And
So go ahead. Yeah, let's start it off.
Yeah, to that point, real quick. And I was going to hit on this. I should have said this earlier about the Notre Dame game. Playing under 46 and a half, you have those key numbers of 45 and 44 all in your favor. A 24-20 game, which is a likely scenario in a Wisconsin-Notre Dame game, 27-17.
Absolutely.
Those numbers are all in your favor if you're playing under. Here, with 47 being a number that a final score will land on quite a bit, having the half, if you liked under, is in your favor. Playing underneath a key number. If you think it's going to get higher, get to 48, another one where 27-21, 28-20, 31-17, a lot of 48s happen. So if you like over, 47 and a half is a perfect number to bet either way you like it, because you get an advantage either way. In this game, Ben, the biggest edge I see so far is in the scheduling. You talked about Iowa State having to play Iowa, certainly an elite defense.
Yeah.
Out of the FCS, they had to play Northern Iowa. By FCS standards, an elite defense. They struggled with both of them. And then they got the break against UNLV. You talked about it. They blew them out. Purdy and Brees Hall and company had their way. For Baylor, they haven't had that stiff test yet. Texas State, Texas Southern, and Kansas, who they mowed down in their Big 12 opener last week, right?
Three cupcakes, more or less.
Yeah, and the difference, the power ratings I keep, the difference in opponents' power ratings so far after 3 games favors Iowa State by about 27 points. So it's a huge edge here in a game where, listen, they lost to Iowa, but nothing's been lost yet for Iowa State. I mean, the big prize is getting to the Big 12 championship game and winning the Big 12 title and hopefully finding yourself in that college football playoff or, in a New Year's Day 6 game, one or the other. But beating Oklahoma and winning that title would be huge for them. I like what I saw out of Baylor's offense last week. When Charlie Brewer transferred out, I was a little nervous about this team, but I think
we just heard the news. What happened with him?
Yeah, he's not going to play at Utah either.
It's crazy. I didn't see that coming.
No, not this early in the season. So maybe Baylor knew what they were doing. But the point here is that their new offensive coordinator, first-year offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, is the guy who coordinated BYU's offense last year for Zach Wilson. And the reports that I was reading over the summer when you're trying to gauge what these guys are going to bring in, and knowing what he added to BYU last season as the offensive coordinator, I have some expectations for the Baylor offense. I'm not going to doubt the Baylor defense whatsoever because Dave Aranda, the head coach, is a defensive whiz. So we know that end of the bargain is pretty much sealed. He'll get his talent in there. He's 2 years in. But the offense is important. And Jeff Grimes, this is something that sticks in my head, Ben. Before, I think last year it was the COVID season, they played Navy, I think, in their opener. And it was a lot of money on Navy. And that was BYU wired away. I think they hung over 50 on Navy. And Navy.
Yeah, they just ran through those guys. I remember that game. It was one of the first like bigger matchups, right? Like of the whole season. So
of the
a
whole
lot of people
season.
a lot of people were watching because we had the whole hiatus without sports. So I remember watching that one.
And Navy's head coach apologized after the game, right, for not having his team ready. But the point here is that prior to that game, I was reading an article, Salt Lake paper, where Jeff Grimes was telling anybody that would listen that his offense was going to be special. And, it's hard to hear that and believe it when you
Mm-hmm.
know the head coach and his style of BYU. You think, oh, yeah, you're 3 yards in a cloud of dust, you're BYU. But Jeff Grimes was right. That offense was creative last year, and he's bringing that to Baylor. So let's see what they do here. What he brings scheme wise, Iowa State hasn't seen on the field. Now, I'm sure they can go get tape of BYU last year and watch some tape. It's probably not the same as facing it on the field. Um, you played the game at that level, that it's probably not the same. It's
Yeah.
film is one thing, seeing a new scheme on the field is something it might take you a half to get used to. So Baylor would have that advantage here. But in the long run, Ben, I think the talent is on Iowa State's side. The advantage is there, and the scheduling edge to me. Once you've seen Iowa, Baylor's a good defense, but it's not Iowa. And I would
No.
expect in this Big Ten opener, Iowa State on the road under Campbell, not a bad proposition. So I'd probably look Iowa State. I was hoping for a little less. Like you said, this game is 7. My power ratings made it 6, but I could still see Iowa State.
Yeah, I have to lean Iowa State here. I go back to that Iowa defense and look, Brock Purdy, he forced, I think, 3 interceptions, right? And, interceptions are tough because for a quarterback, that's the worst thing you can do on the field because you flip the field, give possession to the other team. And then, like I said, UNLV, good to just get back on the field and have some success right after that game. I mean, we're talking regardless of opponent, like a 1-10, because I mean, he couldn't have played any worse than Iowa, right? And I didn't watch much of the UNLV game, but of course, he had his way. And, last week, Iowa and Kent State, if it wasn't for, I think it was a 40-yard pass to their wide receiver, perfect ball. Kent State doesn't really put up any points. This Iowa defense is so good. So I do expect Iowa State to put up points in this one. I'm kind of curious about a team total over for Iowa State because I really do think they're a tad undervalued here. And I understand why Baylor is getting 7, right? Or laying the 7. But I just feel that Baylor is just not as talented. I don't. And I'm not a big Brock Purdy fan, to be completely honest, but I like the spot for Iowa State, even though it's on the road, it's in conference play. And like you said, the Iowa loss always stings, but at least they didn't have to go Iowa Baylor because that would hurt a little bit. But, now you kind of get the focus back, right? Iowa, the coaches will play it off. They say, hey, it's a non-conference game. Let's focus on winning the Big 12, eyes forward. So 7's tough though, right? I mean, I feel like that's a good number where it should be, I guess.
I think power ratings made it right about there, 6. So I think it's probably a good number. Odds makers probably anticipate a little Iowa State money here. And I think to your point about just getting on the field and having some success, you wonder, Iowa State's not a university that comes in with top 10 expectations ever, right?
No.
And so this year they play Iowa and they're ranked like number 9 in the nation and they got this burden on their back. And maybe it was best for that burden to be lifted right away because now they can play a little freer here conference season. I think, it's a situational, it's kind of a outside the box angle. But in a lot of instances with teams and their character, it works. And I think Iowa State, first of all, their head coach, pretty good motivator. And the team is loaded with veterans, so the character and the work ethic is there. So I agree with you. I think Iowa State, if you have to play it, as much as I'm interested in Baylor and how they do this season, I just don't think they're at that level yet.
Yeah, I'm curious if this goes back to 6.5, but I have a feeling it doesn't because that's where it opened at. I would be surprised. So I guess if you like it, you should probably jump on it. But I don't like lane sevens unless I feel super strong about the
Right.
number. But I kind of was late on that one. So any thoughts on the total? I actually lean under a little bit in this one.
Yeah, it depends what you think you can get out of Baylor because I'm with you. Um,
Slight lean, I should say. It's if kind of gun to my head, I do say under.
yeah, because you had talked about potentially liking a team total with Iowa State. And I think I would, probably ride with you on that. I could see Iowa State in a situation where they find their way to 30 points. Now the
Yeah.
question is, can you get that additional amount out of Baylor? Can you get 31-17 to nudge over this total? And when you're trying to cut it that razor thin, you're best off just not being involved. If that's the way you're looking. Now, if you're
Yeah.
looking at a much lower, if you think Baylor's only going to get to 10 or
But then in
13,
that way, it's like, well, why don't you just bet Iowa
Iowa
State
State,
then, right?
right,
Yeah. So
right,
maybe I need to look at that because it looks like the implied team totals would be around 27. So probably 27 and a half for Iowa State. And then for Baylor, you're looking at 20 roughly. So,
right.
but I mean, that seems like a pretty reasonable score in this one.
It does.
27-20. Yeah. So this is a tight line. In my eyes, yeah, I may revisit this because I haven't placed a bet on it, but it was one that I had kind of written down to see. Let's discuss, see what Rob has to say. But yeah, this is a fair line, I would say.
And the only thing you could actually see this getting out of hand if, in fact, this step up in class for Baylor is too much. Again, Texas Southern, Texas State, Kansas.
Yeah,
You could take the all stars from all three of those
I was
teams, and they're
just gonna
not Iowa
say that.
State, right?
They would probably not. I mean, let's try to think. They would be as good as I don't know, and
They
try to
wouldn't be
think of a
good.
team how good they would be. Baylor,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I don't know.
it's not a real good. They're not tested. Let's put it that way. They haven't been
Yeah,
tested, and they're going to be tested because it's conference game. You'll get Iowa State's full focus. They're not coming in here looking past anything. It's a conference opener, so we'll see.
yeah, we will. So let's move on